My ex cheated on me and laughed it off, saying I'd never find someone like her because I was out of her league. A year later, I got engaged to a model from my high school, and now she's having a meltdown over the photos. So this all happened about 2 years ago, but I was scrolling through our relationships the other day and came across this post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him completely openly and didn't even care. It was wild, and it got me thinking about my own experience. I figured it might be cathartic to share, and maybe someone out there will find it helpful. Buckle up, it's a long one. I'm 35 now, but I was 33 when all this went down. I work as a software engineer, yeah, I know, typical Redditor, and I'd been single for about a year after a pretty amicable breakup with my previous girlfriend. Dating in your 30s is rough, guys. I'm fairly introverted and spend most of my free time either coding personal projects, playing video games, currently obsessed with Elden Ring, or hiking with my dog, Shadow. He's a German Shepherd mix and the goodest boy ever. After some gentle prodding from friends, I reluctantly downloaded one of those serious dating apps, not Tinder, but one where people are supposedly looking for relationships rather than hookups. My expectations were pretty low, to be honest. Then I matched with Chloe. Chloe was 30, worked in marketing for a local startup, and was genuinely one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in real life. I'm talking model gorgeous, tall, 5 feet 10 inches, naturally blonde, piercing blue eyes, the kind of woman who turns heads everywhere she goes. Our first conversation just flowed effortlessly. We had the same taste in music, both huge fans of indie rock, similar political views, and even liked the same obscure Netflix documentaries. I remember sitting in my apartment, a small but cozy one-bedroom near downtown that I'd decorated with IKEA furniture and a few too many gaming posters, just grinning at my phone like an idiot during our first few text conversations. It seemed too good to be true. After a couple weeks of talking, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out. I suggested this little ramen place I love. It's tucked away in this strip mall that looks sketchy from the outside but has the best tonkotsu ramen in the city. I was nervous as hell, not gonna lie. I've always considered myself reasonably attractive. I'm 6 feet 0 inches, keep in decent shape, though I definitely don't have a six-pack or anything, and I've been told I have a nice smile. But Chloe was on another level entirely. When she walked into the restaurant, literally everyone turned to look. I remember feeling this weird mix of pride and insecurity, like wow, she's here for me? But also there's no way this lasts. It's weird feeling lucky but also preemptively heartbroken at the same time. But the date went amazingly well. We talked for hours. The poor server had to politely hint that they were closing soon. It turned out we had even more in common than I thought. We both grew up in small towns before moving to the city, both had older brothers who were ultra competitive, and we even discovered we'd been at the same concert 3 years prior. What are the odds, right? Things moved pretty quickly after that. Within a month, we were officially a couple. Within 3 months, she was staying at my place most nights. My dog absolutely adored her, which I took as a good sign. Shadow is an excellent judge of character. She'd bring over fancy coffee beans for my espresso machine and introduced me to her skincare routine, which I secretly really enjoyed. Guys, don't knock a good face mask until you've tried it. The one thing that always lingered in the back of my mind was the amount of attention she got from other guys. And I mean constant attention. We couldn't go anywhere without some dude trying to chat her up, often right in front of me. She'd get free drinks at bars while I was standing right there. Guys would literally stop her on the street to ask for her number. At first, I thought it was kind of amusing. She'd always shut them down politely but firmly, and then give me this little smile afterward like we shared a secret. It made me feel special, like she was choosing me over all these other options. She'd often tell me about DMs she got on Instagram from random guys, sometimes even showing me the more ridiculous ones so we could laugh at them together. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She was always transparent about the attention she received, and she seemed genuinely into me. She'd send me sweet texts throughout the day, cook my favorite meals, her homemade lasagna was to die for, and was always planning thoughtful dates. One time she even surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band when they came to town, and I hadn't even mentioned they were touring. But looking back, there were signs. Little things that I dismissed at the time but that became glaring red flags in retrospect. About 6 months into our relationship, we were having one of those deep, late-night conversations that happen when you're both a little tipsy and feeling philosophical. We were lying in bed, sharing a bottle of wine, a fancy Cabernet she'd brought over. She was really into wine and was teaching me about different varieties, and somehow the topic of hall passes came up. You know, that hypothetical scenario where you each get to pick one celebrity you'd be allowed to sleep with, no questions asked. It's supposed to be a silly, harmless conversation. She brought it up, not me, which I thought was a little unusual. Normally I was the one who started those kinds of goofy hypothetical discussions. She said her hall pass was Justin Timberlake, which seemed reasonable enough. But then she followed it up with something that made my stomach drop. I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me. And she said it with this little smirk that I'd never seen before, like she was deadly serious. It wasn't even the content of what she said that bothered me. I mean, she was incredibly beautiful. It was the arrogance in her tone, this complete confidence that felt so out of character for the down-to-earth woman I thought I knew. I laughed it off awkwardly and changed the subject, but that comment stuck with me. It felt like a glimpse behind a curtain, like for just a moment she'd let her mask slip. Life went on, and things returned to normal. We settled into a comfortable routine. I'd cook breakfast on weekdays, I'm an early riser and she definitely wasn't, and she'd handle dinner most nights. Weekends were for exploring new restaurants, hiking with Shadow, or binge-watching shows together. We watched all of Breaking Bad in like 2 weeks, she'd never seen it before and got completely hooked. Then, about 8 months in, I started noticing changes in her behavior. It was subtle at first, she'd get home from work 30 to 45 minutes later than usual. Normally she'd be home around 6 o'clock, but suddenly it was 6:30, then 7 o'clock, sometimes even 7:30. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. Everyone works late occasionally, right? But the excuses she gave were vague. Really vague. Oh, I just lost track of time. I ran into a friend and we chatted for a bit. Traffic was terrible. That kind of thing. What stood out to me was how different this was from her usual communication style. Before, if she was running late, I'd get a detailed account. The client meeting ran long because they couldn't decide on the color scheme, and then Sarah wanted to discuss the social media strategy for next month, and then my boss asked me to review the new copy for the website. I started noticing other changes too. She became more protective of her phone, always keeping it face down or in her pocket. She'd take calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones. Our intimacy life, which had been pretty amazing, became less frequent and more perfunctory? Like she was going through the motions. And she was irritable. If I asked where she'd been or why she was late, she'd snap at me, accuse me of being controlling or not trusting her. I'd always back down because I hate confrontation, something my therapist says I need to work on, and I didn't want to fight. But the little voice in my head kept getting louder. Something wasn't right. After about 3 weeks of this behavior, I finally worked up the courage to say something. We were having dinner at home, she'd picked up Thai food on her way back, pad Thai for her, green curry for me, our usual order, and I just came out with it, "Is everything okay? You seem different lately." She denied it, of course. "Everything's fine. I'm just stressed with work." But I pressed a little, "You're coming home later, you're on your phone all the time, you seem distant. I'm worried about us." That seemed to get through to her. Her expression softened, and she apologized, saying it really was just work stress and that she'd been taking it out on me unfairly. She promised it wasn't personal and that she'd try to be more present. I wanted to believe her. I really did. And things did improve, at least on the surface. She made more of an effort to be home on time, to be affectionate, to engage with me like she used to. But something still felt off. When she'd tell me stories about her day now, they felt rehearsed, like she was reciting lines from a script. She'd avoid eye contact, fiddle with her hair, a nervous habit I'd noticed early in our relationship, and there was just this hollowness to her explanations. I remember one night specifically. She came home around 9 p.m., which was unusually late even for her recent pattern. She explained that she'd run into an old coworker and they'd gone for drinks to catch up. She gave details, the bar they went to, what they talked about, even what she'd ordered, a Moscow Mule, supposedly her coworker's recommendation. But as she was talking, something just clicked in my brain. I can't explain it, but I just knew she was lying. Every instinct in my body was screaming that something was very, very wrong. That's when I first thought, she's cheating on me. This isn't some minor issue or a rough patch. She's having an affair. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to know the truth. My first thought was to check her phone. That's where all the evidence would be, right? But I quickly realized that wasn't going to work. She was glued to her phone, and even if I managed to get hold of it, she probably had a passcode. Plus, I'm not the most tech-savvy guy in the world. Despite being a software engineer, I build backends for web applications, not mobile security stuff, and I wouldn't even know where to start looking. And if I'm being totally honest, a part of me was afraid of what I might find. So I decided to go a different route. A route that I never in a million years thought I'd take. I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I know how it sounds. Trust me, I felt ridiculous even considering it. It was like something out of a bad movie. But I was desperate. I needed to know for sure, to have concrete proof one way or another. I couldn't confront her based on just a feeling. I did some research online and found a guy with good reviews. His name was Mike, a former cop in his 50s with his own agency. I called and set up a meeting for the following day during my lunch break. Walking into his office was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. It was in this nondescript office building downtown, sandwiched between an accountant and a dentist. The inside looked like any other small business, a reception desk, unmanned when I arrived, some generic landscape paintings on the walls, a few chairs in the waiting area. But the door had private investigations in small, professional lettering, which somehow made it both more and less bizarre. Mike looked exactly like you'd expect, slightly overweight, balding, with that world-weary expression that said he'd seen it all. He had a coffee stain on his shirt and a wedding ring that looked too tight for his finger. But he was professional and, most importantly, he didn't make me feel stupid or paranoid. I laid out the whole situation, from the beginning of our relationship to her recent behavior changes. It took about 30 minutes, and he just sat there, taking occasional notes, nodding at key points. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "I've seen this 100 times before, son. That was both comforting and devastating to hear. He explained his rates, which were steep, definitely going to be eating ramen for a month after this, and recommended a 2-week surveillance period since her pattern of late nights wasn't consistent. But I couldn't afford that, so we settled on 10 days. I gave him all the information he needed, her full name, workplace address, home address, my place, since she was staying there most nights, a recent photo, and her card details. He told me not to contact him before the 10 days were up unless there was an emergency, and to try to act normal around her. He emphasized that last point: if she suspected something, she might change her patterns. Those 10 days were absolute torture. I felt like I was living in a spy movie, going through the motions of normal life while this undercover operation was happening in the background. I'd watch her leave for work in the morning, knowing that at some point during the day, this stranger would be following her, documenting her movements, potentially gathering evidence that would shatter my world. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake next to her at night, listening to her breathe, wondering where she'd really been that day. I'd lost my appetite completely. I dropped like 7 pounds in those 10 days. My coworkers started asking if I was sick. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Asking about her day, knowing she might be lying. Kissing her goodbye in the morning, not knowing if she was going to see someone else. Watching TV together in the evenings, her head on my shoulder, wondering if she'd been intimate with another man just hours earlier. During those 10 days, she came home late 3 times. Each time with the same vague excuses, each time making my suspicions grow stronger. I'd think to myself, is this it? Is this the night Mike is going to catch her? Finally, the 10 days were up. Mike called right on schedule and asked if I wanted to meet in person to discuss his findings. I said yes immediately. There was no way I could handle this over the phone. I drove to his office with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. My palms were sweating on the steering wheel, and I felt physically ill. Part of me still hoped he'd tell me I was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation for everything. When I arrived, Mike was waiting for me, a manila envelope on his desk. He asked if I wanted him to explain what he'd found or if I preferred to look at the evidence myself first. I asked him to explain. I needed a buffer, some preparation before seeing whatever was in that envelope. He took a deep breath and said simply, "Your suspicions were right." Those 4 words felt like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it, having it confirmed was devastating. He explained that he'd followed her to an apartment building in a neighborhood about 20 minutes from my place. On 3 separate occasions during the 10-day period, she went there directly from work and stayed for approximately 2 hours each time. She always entered alone but left with the same man. Mike had identified him as Cody Richards, 28, a personal trainer at the gym where Chloe worked out. I thought I might throw up right there in his office. Mike slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photos, Chloe and this guy, who, of course, looked like a fitness model, outside the apartment building. Embracing. Holding hands. Kissing next to her car. It was all there in black and white. Undeniable proof of her betrayal. I managed not to break down in Mike's office, but it was close. I thanked him, paid his final invoice, ouch, and somehow drove home in a daze. I don't even remember the drive, it's just blank in my memory. I got home before Chloe that evening and just sat on the couch, waiting. Shadow could sense something was wrong and kept putting his head on my knee, whining softly. Poor pup had no idea his world was about to be disrupted too. When I heard her key in the lock, my heart started racing again. She walked in, wearing this floral dress I'd always loved, smiling like nothing was wrong. She started chatting about her day, something about a client presentation, but I couldn't focus on her words. I interrupted her. "We need to talk. Please sit down." She must have seen something in my expression because her smile faded immediately. She sat in the armchair across from me, her body language suddenly defensive. I just laid it all out there. I told her I knew about the affair, that I'd hired a spy, that I had proof. I kept my voice calm and steady, which was a miracle considering how I felt inside. Her initial reaction was shock, her eyes widened, and she just stared at me open-mouthed. Then she seemed to compose herself, like she was gathering her thoughts, deciding on her approach. What I expected was denial, anger, maybe tears. What I got was so much worse. She laughed. She actually laughed. Then she stood up, looking down at me like I was some pathetic creature, and started this incredible monologue. "You want to leave me? Are you kidding? So what if I had a little excitement on the side? It was just physical, it didn't mean anything. Yes, I cheated, but where do you think you'll go from here? Do you think you'll ever get someone like me again? Hasn't it been clear to you that I'm out of your league? It was just intimacy. Is that what you want to destroy our lives over?" I was completely stunned. This wasn't the reaction of someone who was sorry, who wanted to make things right. This was someone who genuinely believed she was so far above me that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection she deigned to throw my way. In that moment, all the hurt transformed into something else, pure, burning rage. I stood up, looked her straight in the eye, and told her exactly how much I despised her and everything she stood for. I don't remember my exact words, but they were not pleasant. Then I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my dog's leash, called Shadow to my side, and walked out. I didn't pack a bag, I didn't make a plan. I just needed to get out of there before I said or did something I'd regret. I ended up at a pet-friendly motel that night, Shadow curled up next to me on a bed that smelled faintly of cigarettes despite the no smoking sign on the door. I lay there staring at the water stains on the ceiling, replaying the confrontation in my head, still not quite believing what had happened. The next day, I went back to get some of my things while she was supposed to be at work. But she was there, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy. She looked like she'd been crying, but when she saw me, she put on this smug smile and said, "I knew you'd be back," like I just had a little tantrum and was now crawling back to her. I didn't say a word. I just went to the bedroom, grabbed some clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and a few other essentials. I couldn't take everything at once, but I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. As I was leaving, she called after me, something like "You'll regret this," but I was already closing the door. I blocked her number that afternoon. I stayed with my buddy Dave for a couple of weeks while I looked for a new place. Dave's the kind of friend everyone should have. He didn't ask too many questions, just offered me a spare room, kept the fridge stocked with beer, and let me play with his PlayStation whenever I wanted. We'd been friends since college, and he'd never liked Chloe much. Turns out his instincts were better than mine. Eventually, I found a small apartment in a different part of town. It wasn't as nice as my old place, but it was mine, and it didn't have any memories of Chloe. Shadow and I started our new life there, just the two of us. I went through all the typical post-breakup phases, the anger, the depression, the self-doubt. There were nights I'd lie awake wondering if she was right, if I really would never find anyone on her level again. Those were the worst nights. But I started healing. I threw myself into work, picked up a few new hobbies, started learning to play guitar, which I'm still terrible at, spent more time with friends I'd somewhat neglected during my relationship with Chloe. I even started going to therapy, which I should have done years ago. A few weeks after I moved out, I went back with Dave and another friend to get the rest of my stuff. Chloe was there and seemed genuinely shocked that I was actually going through with the breakup. I think it finally hit her that I was serious, that I wasn't coming back. She tried texting me a few times after that from different numbers since I blocked her. At first, the messages were mocking and sarcastic, like she thought the whole thing was a joke. Then they turned angry, then pleading. Her last message to me was, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." She was right about that, but not in the way she meant it. Fast forward about 7 months. I was in a much better place mentally and emotionally. My new apartment had started to feel like home. I'd even put up some actual framed art instead of posters. Adulting, work was going well, and I'd tentatively started dating again, though nothing serious. Then came my 15-year high school reunion. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but a few of my old friends convinced me it would be fun. So I bought a ticket, dug out a decent button-up shirt, and showed up at my old high school gymnasium, which was decorated with streamers in our school colors and a sad-looking disco ball. It actually turned out to be a great time. It was cool seeing people I hadn't thought about in years, catching up on their lives, reminiscing about the stupid things we did as teenagers. The popular kids weren't so intimidating anymore. Most of them had peaked in high school and were now balding with dad bods. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm working on a respectable dad bod myself. I noticed that Veronica Hamilton wasn't there. Veronica had been one of the most popular girls in our class, tall, gorgeous, the kind of girl every guy had a crush on but most were too intimidated to talk to. We'd been friendly in high school, had a few classes together, but weren't close friends or anything. After graduation, she'd become a model, and a pretty successful one from what I'd heard. I'd occasionally see her in magazines or ads online. Her best friend from high school, Lisa, was at the reunion though. They were still close apparently, which I thought was cool. I went over to say hi to Lisa, just to catch up. We were chatting about nothing in particular when she got this huge smile on her face. "I know Veronica is going to kill me for telling you this," she said, leaning in conspiratorially, "but she's always had a crush on you." I laughed it off. It seemed ridiculous, Veronica Hamilton, successful model, having a crush on me? No way. We weren't even in the same social circle in high school. We were friendly, sure, but nothing more. Lisa insisted though. She said Veronica had actually asked her to check me out at the reunion, to see if I was there and if I still looked as good as in high school, her words, not mine. Then Lisa dropped the bomb, "She's still into you. So if you're single and not afraid of someone with baggage, you might want to give it a shot." I spent the rest of the night thinking about that conversation. It felt good, I have to admit, especially after everything with Chloe. It was validating to know that someone like Veronica, who Chloe would definitely consider out of my league, might be interested in me. After the reunion, I decided to take a chance. What did I have to lose? I found Veronica on Instagram and sent her a DM. I also mentioned to Lisa that I'd messaged her, just in case Veronica didn't check her DMs from people she didn't follow. 5 days went by with no response. I figured she was probably busy, or maybe Lisa had exaggerated the whole thing. I wasn't too bothered by it, it had been worth a shot. But then, she replied. And her message was enthusiastic. "Oh my gosh Keith. It's been so long." Actually had multiple letters repeated and emojis, which I've heard is a good sign from women, lol. We started messaging back and forth, catching up on the past 15 years. We talked about high school, college, our careers, our families, everything. After a few days of that, Veronica suggested we switch to FaceTime. She said she was tired of typing so much, and I was happy to agree. We started video chatting almost every day. She was in Brussels at the time, working on a modeling campaign for some luxury brand I'd never heard of. She told me all about the industry, the travel, the photo shoots, the good and bad parts of modeling. She even sent me behind-the-scenes pictures from the set. It was fascinating getting this glimpse into her world, so different from my own. But despite our different careers and lifestyles, we connected on a deeper level. We discovered we had similar values, similar senses of humor, similar goals for the future. After a couple of weeks of talking almost daily, it started to feel like we were dating, even though we hadn't officially defined it. So, during one of our FaceTime calls, I decided to just ask her directly, "What are we doing here?" She laughed, not mockingly like Chloe had, but warmly, and said that we were already really good friends, but she'd love to be more. I took that as my cue and asked if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She said yes immediately, no hesitation. Now, obviously, the long-distance thing was a challenge. I'd had a long-distance relationship in college that ended badly, and I wasn't eager to repeat that experience. But this was different. This was Veronica, and I was already falling hard for her. So I booked a flight to Brussels to visit her. She was going to be there for a few more weeks, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to see her in person and experience a bit of her world. The trip was amazing. Brussels itself is a beautiful city, the waffles alone are worth the flight, but being with Veronica there was magical. She took me to her favorite cafes, showed me around the historic parts of the city, introduced me to her colleagues from the modeling agency. Everyone was so welcoming, and it was clear they all adored her. She even took me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element. It was incredible watching the transformation, my sweet, goofy Veronica turning into this poised, elegant creature in front of the camera. I took some pictures of my own from the sidelines, cheering her on. That trip confirmed what I already knew, I was falling in love with her. And miraculously, she seemed to feel the same way. So I'm in Brussels, having the time of my life with Veronica. I took a bunch of pictures at her photo shoot and decided to post some on Instagram. I didn't put them on my main feed though, I added them to my close friend's story, thinking they'd just be seen by a small group of people. Here's the thing, I completely forgot that Chloe was still on my close friends list. I rarely used Instagram and just hadn't thought to remove her. I blocked her everywhere else, but not there. Big mistake. A few hours after I posted the pictures, I got a message from her. We hadn't spoken in over a year at this point. The message said, "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" I calmly replied, "That's my girlfriend." She didn't respond right away. I could see the typing indicator appear and disappear multiple times, like she was writing something, then deleting it, then writing something else. Finally, all she sent was a sarcastic "sure." That's when I decided to go for it. I told her I didn't need to make her believe me. Then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also asked how her man from the apartment was doing, knowing that would sting. She read the message but didn't reply. Then I blocked her on Instagram too, finally cutting off the last connection between us. Yes, it was petty. Yes, it was probably immature. But you know what? It felt damn good. It's been 2 years since all this went down, and I can honestly say I'm happier now than I've ever been. Veronica and I have been together since the trip to Brussels. After about 3 months of long distance, with visits whenever possible, she decided to cut back on international modeling jobs and focus more on US-based work so we could be together. We now live in a cozy apartment with Shadow, who absolutely adores her, and her cat, Luna, who tolerates me. Our place is a mix of my tech stuff and her art and fashion books, and somehow it works perfectly. We've settled into a comfortable routine, morning runs with Shadow, working from home together most days. She still travels occasionally for shoots, trying new recipes for dinner, she's teaching me to cook properly, and binge-watching shows at night. And here's the thing about Veronica that still amazes me, despite being literally paid for her looks, she's one of the most down-to-earth, genuine people I've ever met. She never makes me feel insecure or like I'm not good enough for her. It's the exact opposite of how Chloe made me feel. I'm actually thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her if she somehow reads this. Looking back, I can see all the red flags with Chloe that I ignored. Her constant need for validation, her subtle put-downs, her entitlement. I was so blinded by her looks and the honor of being chosen by someone so beautiful that I overlooked her character flaws. With Veronica, I've learned that true beauty really does come from within, as cliché as that sounds. Yes, she's gorgeous, but what makes me love her is her kindness, her humor, her intelligence, her authenticity. I've also learned to trust my instincts. Deep down, I knew something was wrong with Chloe long before I had proof. That little voice in your head that says something's not right here? Listen to it. And finally, I've learned that there's no such thing as leagues in relationships. Compatibility isn't about who's more attractive or successful or popular. It's about values, communication, mutual respect, and genuine connection. So that's my story, Reddit. A tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately finding love in the most unexpected place. If you're going through something similar, hang in there. It gets better, I promise. TL, gorgeous girlfriend cheated, told me I'd never find anyone on her level again. 7 months later, Reconnected with a high school acquaintance who's now a successful model. We've been happily together for almost 2 years, and my ex can't handle it. Edit, thanks for all the awards and kind comments. I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, Veronica knows about the pie situation with my ex, and no, she doesn't think it's creepy. She says she would have done the same thing. 2. Shadow is now 7 years old and living his best life with 2 humans who adore him. 3. I haven't heard from Chloe since that Instagram exchange, and I plan to keep it that way.